Our next speaker is looking into the, well, I would like to say into the future, but kind of stuff that is happening now and will certainly inspire you. It's about how you bring together the human and the tech, but instead of a wearable tech, the human becoming the tech. So please, without further ado, let's welcome the world's first human cyborg to the stage, Neil Harbisson.
Thank you. Hi, well, I was born completely colorblind, so I was born with a condition called achromatism, so I've always seen in grayscale, and as a child, I tried to ignore the existence of color, but it was impossible for me to ignore that color exists because people who see color keep mentioning it in every single conversation almost, so I tried to ignore the existence of color, but I couldn't. Because color appears in daily conversations in elements that have nothing to do with the beauty of color, like yellow pages, Bluetooth, Greenpeace, Red Cross, Blue Tack, Red Bull, Pink Panther, James Brown is in his last name, or this huge country called Greenland, which is not even green. So I kept hearing the names of colors every single day. Also, when you use color as a code, it can be confusing. Hot water, cold water, sometimes it's only expressed through color. And maps, this is fine, but if I go to Tokyo, I can get easily lost, because some maps only use color codes. And when I was a child and I was trying to learn the colors of flags, I had this situation. So three flags, three countries share exactly the same flag, which is very beautiful, but it's extremely confusing. Also, when I was speaking to people, if someone would ask me, have you seen a man with ginger hair, blue eyes, and dressed in pink? I would have absolutely no idea, because the only information I get here is that the man has hair, that he has eyes, and that he's not naked, basically. So the reason why I wanted to sense color is not because of the beauty of color. I didn't want to change my sight. It was because of a social element. To me, seeing in grayscale has many benefits. I see better at night, because people who see in grayscale have better night vision. We also can see longer distances, because color doesn't interfere with our perception of distance. We can memorize shapes more easily, because color doesn't distract us from shape. And also, photocopies are cheaper in black and white, which was always an advantage. So I didn't want to change my sight, but I wanted to have a sense of color. So when I was studying music, I realized that there's been many theories relating color and sound. I was particularly interested in Isaac Newton's theory relating color and sound. He created this theory in the 1600s, where each color of the rainbow has a specific musical note. So I wanted to take Isaac Newton's theory into practice. So we wanted to create a system that would allow me to hear the frequencies of color. Isaac Newton had no way of detecting the frequencies of color, but now technology allows us to detect the frequencies of color. Red, for example, travels at 420 millions of waves per second. If we could hear this wave, we would hear a note between F and F sharp. So we created a system 15 years ago that suddenly allowed me to actually hear the notes of the colors around me. So using a webcam, a 5-kilo computer, and a pair of headphones 15 years ago, I started to hear color. So I slowly memorized the sounds of color, and I gave names to them in the same way that you give name to blue. I would give name to blue whenever I would hear a note between C and C sharp. So I memorized the notes and the names that you give to it until I was able to distinguish all the spectrum through sound. When you hear the frequencies of color, you hear something like this. So now we will hear red to orange. So it's a pure wave, a sine wave. So it's a pure wave, and I had to get used to the fact that there's color everywhere. So suddenly I was hearing music everywhere I would look. I had strong headaches at the beginning, but slowly the brain got used to it, and it became normal to hear the sounds of color. So at one point, I was able to distinguish all the visual spectrum through sound. Like anyone that would see color, I would be able to distinguish it through sound. But I didn't see why I should stop that. There's many more colors that exist that the human eye cannot sense, like infrareds and ultraviolets. So I didn't see why I should stop in the visual human spectrum. So I decided to include infrareds and ultraviolets in 2007. So since then, I was suddenly able to sense if there was infrared or ultraviolet around me. So infrared is an interesting color because it allows me to know if there's movement detectors in a room, so I can tell if there's alarms are on or off in shops or in banks. And in many cases, they are off, so it's interesting to know that these sensors are not actually working. Also, ultraviolet perception allows me to feel if it's a good day or a bad day to sunbathe. If I sense at a high level of ultraviolet, I avoid the sun or I put some sun cream. So my aim is to continuously extend my color perception beyond the infrareds and the ultraviolets. So when I started this project, I didn't want to use technology to sense color, and I didn't want to wear technology to sense color. I wanted to sense color, so I wanted to create a new body part. First, I thought of creating a third eye that would be implanted in the middle of my head, but this would limit my color perception to what I have in front. So I thought that the best way of sensing colors would be to create a completely new organ, which would be an antenna implanted in my head that would allow me to feel the vibrations of color directly inside my skull. So the vibration of color would go in the antenna and it would vibrate inside my bone. And when you have a vibration inside the bone, it becomes an inner sound. So I could still hear color, but through bone conduction. So when I designed the antenna with my friends, I went to the doctor and I said I wanted an antenna implant. And he said, sorry, we don't do this here. We don't do antenna implants. If you want to have this antenna implanted in your head, first of all, you'll have to convince a bioethical committee. So I spoke to a bioethical committee and I presented the antenna implant to the bioethical committee. And they said it was not ethical to have this antenna implanted in my head for three main reasons. One, because it's not a pre-existing body part. If it was a leg or an arm, they would find it ethical. Second, because it's not a pre-existing sense. Sensing infrareds and ultraviolets is not a human sense, so they didn't find it ethical. And the third reason, they were extremely worried about the image the hospital would have if someone came out with an antenna sticking out of the head. So they said no to the surgery, so I had to find a doctor willing to do the surgery anonymously, and I found one in Barcelona. So we did the surgery, and this is my head facing down. So my hair was removed, the skin was reduced, and then my head was drilled 4 times for 4 different implants. One is the chip that now vibrates inside my head. So if there's red in front of me, the vibration of red goes inside my head and it vibrates inside the bone, and then I hear the vibration of red, and I also feel the vibration of red. So it vibrates inside my skull and it creates an inner sound. 2 other implants are to hold the structure of the antenna, and the 4th implant is internet connection. So I can also receive colors from external senses, not only from the antenna. So the whole antenna was surgically osseointegrated, and then it took 2 months for the antenna and my bone to merge. So this is now part of my skeleton. So I'm also officially taller now because this is part of my body. I had to get used to the new height as well. So the internet connection, I use it to receive color from 5 different people. I have permission from 5 friends, 1 in each continent, that can actually use their mobile phone to stream live images from their phone to my head. So now I'm here in Rome, but my friend from Melbourne can start streaming live images directly into my head. So if there's a beautiful sunset there, I could now suddenly be sensing the colors of a sunset in Australia. So my friends can actually share a sense. They can use the internet as a sensory extension. Also, if they send colors at night, so if they start sending blue or yellow at night, they sometimes wake me up. Or they can color my dreams. So if they start sending blue, my dream might suddenly become blue, or my dream might suddenly take me to the sea or to the sky. So my friends can actually alter my dreams or color my dreams by using the internet as a sense, which is something that I think we will start seeing in the next decade, how the internet is not only used as a communication system or a tool, but also as a sense or sensory extension. And we will see the internet of senses, how we can connect with each other by using the internet as a sensory extension. Since 2014, I've been using the internet connection to connect to NASA's International Space Station, which then allows me to sense colors from space. Without having to physically go to space, I can actually be there and perceive the colors from space and explore the colors of space without physically going there. So I call this becoming a senstronaut, how we can send our senses to space and explore space without having to physically go there. There's many colors in space that we don't receive here. The space is not black. It's actually extremely colorful, but full of ultraviolets and infrareds that we don't actually see. I don't see this as AI. The antenna is not artificial intelligence. I call it AS. If it was AI, the antenna would be giving me the names of colors, blue, yellow, pink, but the antenna is not giving me the names of colors. I didn't want to merge with AI. I didn't want technology to tell me what colors were surrounding me. I wanted to feel colors. I wanted to sense colors, so I call this AS. So it's an artificial sense. So when you merge with AS, the eye is created by the brain, not by the machine, and it takes longer. It took me years to actually be able to sense or to identify all the colors around me. Also, I don't see this as virtual reality. reality or augmented reality. I don't live in a virtual reality or augmented reality. I call it a revealed reality, because technology is allowing me to sense a reality that already exists, but that the human body cannot sense. So I think that we will see many more projects in the future creating revealed realities. There's a lot of reality around us now that our bodies cannot sense, but if you merge with technology, you'll be able to reveal this reality, and you'll be able to sense things that already surround us, but that human bodies cannot sense. So revealed realities might be something that we'll see happening much more in the 2020s. This is an MRI scan of my brain. I feel no difference between the software and my brain anymore, and that's why I actually feel and identify myself as a cyborg. Cyborg comes from the union between cybernetics and organism. I feel this word really defines what I feel. I feel that I am technology. I don't feel that I'm using technology or wearing technology, and that's what I tried to explain to the UK government in 2004, because I have a British passport and I had to renew it in 2004, but they said that there was a problem with the picture. They said there's a norm, a law that says electronic equipment is not allowed on passport photos. I replied saying that what they were seeing was not an electronic equipment. I'm not wearing an antenna. I have an antenna in the same way that I'm not wearing a nose. I have a nose. And that they should consider the antenna a body part, an extension of my senses. And I told them that I identified myself as a cyborg. They replied saying no, and they also asked me to call them, and it became like a long conversation with the UK passport office. In the end, they accepted the explanation, and they allowed me to appear in 2004 with the first antenna, and then when the antenna was implanted, the picture was renewed. This helps me travel a lot because I always have problems in airports, so having it in the passport helps me. I am now in conversations with the Swedish government because all the materials that I used to create this antenna are Swedish, so I'm telling them that I am Swedish, and therefore I should be allowed to become Swedish. So I think that the requirements for becoming a Swedish citizen should include that if you have a Swedish body part, and then they should decide for how many years you need to have a Swedish body part, you should also be allowed to become Swedish. So maybe in the future, governments will regulate how many years you need to have a body part from that country in order to apply for citizenship. I see all this as cyborg art, the art of creating your own senses, the art of creating your own body parts, and the art of designing your perception of reality. And there's a change in the way you live, not only the way you create art. I can now, for example, dress in a way that it sounds good, not only that it looks good, but I can decide what sounds I want to have. If I want to wear silence, I go completely black. If I want to wear C major, I would dress in pink, yellow, and blue. If I want to dress in a minor chord, I would dress like this. So I would wear this color combination in a funeral. Or I can also design clothes that actually sounds like a melody. Today I'm actually wearing a lot of music in my shirt. It sounds like a symphony. I can also design clothes that sounds like specific melodies. This is electronic music by Sega Bodega. So when I look at the tie, I hear electronic music. So the longer the tie, the longer the melody. So I can decide how much music I want to wear. Also, I've had to make some changes in fashion. There's no fashion for people with new organs or with new senses. There's no hats for people with antennas, for example. So I've had to create holes in all hats that have been given to me. And then this allows me to actually have hats. We are presenting cyborg fashion in Madrid Fashion Week this year. So we will be presenting 6 different models with new senses and new organs, and clothes adapted to these new organs and new senses. Hearing color also means that when I listen to music, I perceive color, so I can actually paint what I hear. So I really enjoy painting the notes that I hear. This is Mozart's Queen of the Night, for example, note by note from the middle to the end, and this is Baby Baby by Justin Bieber, which looks very different from Mozart. Also, when we speak, we use different frequencies which relate to different colors, so we can transpose speeches into color. We all have dominant colors when we speak. The one on the left is a speech by Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. The one on the right is a speech by Hitler. So they look very different because they used very different frequencies when they spoke. Also, food is a huge change. Now I can hear tomatoes and I can hear any type of food, and I really enjoy composing music with food. So depending on how I put the food on the plate, I can actually eat a song. So I really enjoy composing music with salads. And also I've been collaborating with Celia de Can Roca, a restaurant where you can actually also experience the sound of food. You can go to this restaurant, and then the food is placed on a chromaphone, which we created, which is a replica of my antenna, but converted into a dish. The food is placed on this plate, and when you rotate, you can hear the song. So you can go there and ask for some Vivaldi as the main dish or some Lady Gaga desserts. So you can choose what songs you want to eat. If you have children that don't like eating vegetables, maybe they will like eating vegetables if the vegetables sound like Justin Bieber. So actually, it can alter the way we perceive things that maybe we didn't like before. So now, since I hear color, I can compose music by looking at things. I no longer need to play an instrument. So I really enjoy walking around supermarkets, because in supermarkets there's lots of colors. So to me, there's lots of melodies in a supermarket. So it's like going to a nightclub for me. Just walking around the supermarket gives me a lot of different melodies, especially the aisles with cleaning products. That's the most exciting area of a supermarket, because it has unexpected colors and also very bright and unexpected. This is also the sound of art, so I can now listen to artists. I can listen to a Picasso, to an Andy Warhol. All painters have become composers, and they all sound different. I can literally hear the scream, which sounds like this. Very microtonal, because Munch used lots of microtones, and whereas Andy Warhol sounds very loud, you can usually hear an Andy Warhol from the other end of the museum because it's very saturated. But one of the huge changes is the way I perceive you, people. Like when I look at your faces, I can actually hear your faces. So I really enjoy creating sound portraits where I get close to someone's face and then I write down the sound of the eyes, the lips, the skin, the hair, and then I send them an MP3 of their face so that they can listen to themselves. One of the first sound portraits I did was of Prince Charles. I asked him if I could listen to his face, and this was his reaction when I asked him. We all sound different. Prince Charles sounds quite C major. Judi Dench has very, very silent hair. James Cameron has a very high-pitched sound of skin. Moby sounds less than other people because he has no hair, so that's one note less. Marina Abramovic sounds very, very soft, very low frequencies. Macaulay Culkin sounds pure C major, so it's unusual to find someone that sounds like a pure major chord. Iris Apfel has an extremely high-pitched sound of eyes, which is unusual. Robert De Niro has a melody in his lips because he has different shades of red. Philip Glass sounds extremely, extremely microtonal, like his music. And Bono had very loud glasses here. So we all have a specific soundscape. What really shocked me is that people who say they're black, they're not black. And people who say they're white, they're not white. People who say they're black, they're actually very, very dark orange. And people who say they're white, they're actually very, very light orange. So the fact that people say that humans are black and white is completely false. We are all different shades of orange. This is an example of a face, the sound of a face. I can also create face concerts where the audience cues and then I start playing someone's eyes, lips, skin, and I create rhythms with the sounds of the colors of the audience. So face concerts depend on the audience. So if the concert sounds really bad, it's not my fault, it's their fault, because that's where the music is coming from. The last face concert I did was of Prince Albert II of Monaco, and he liked the sound of his face so much that he's using it as his ringtone. So whenever someone calls him, he hears the sound of his face. So when I started this project in 2003, I had no idea what would happen. I had no example of someone adding a new sense. First problem that we thought could happen was that my brain would reject the new sense. So that was the first risk, that my brain would reject this new sensory input. It didn't happen. The second risk was that my body would reject the organ, so that my body would reject the material of the antenna, and it didn't happen either. So the only thing that happened was social reaction. That's something that I'm still not used to. The fact that I have an antenna in my head means that I've been speaking to strangers every single day since 2004. People have stopped me asking what this is. In 2004, most people thought it was a reading light, so they would ask me if I could turn on the light, or they were wondering where my book was. In 2005-06, they thought it was a microphone, a flexible microphone. In 2007, many people thought it was a hands-free telephone, so they thought I was on the phone all the time. In 2009, people thought it was a GoPro cam, that I was filming my life. In 2012, 11, 12, people thought it was something to do with Google Streetview. So many people think I was streaming the streets. And in 2015, children would ask if this was some kind of extendable selfie stick. And in 2016, many people around the world just shouted at me Pokemon, and they tried to catch me. So it's changed what people think it is. It also varies depending on the country I am in. I was once in Naples, and a very old man came and asked me what this was. I explained to him what it was, and he said, okay, this is very good, but can you do cappuccinos with it? Because it looks like a cappuccino. So it changes depending on the year I am in or the space I am in. Hopefully in the 2020s, people will just think it's a new sensory organ, and we will see more people around the world with new organs and new senses. In 2010, I created the Cyborg Foundation with Moonquake, which aims for the creation of new senses and new organs. Some of the senses are sensing movement without your eyes. So these are earrings that allow you to feel if there's movement in front of you. So there's a vibration in each ear. Depending on the interval, you can also feel the exact speed of any movement in front of you. So this gives you speed perception as well. So you can tell if someone's walking at 4 per hour or 7 per hour. Also, if you turn around the earrings, it allows you to sense what's behind you. So it gives you retroception. So you could feel if there's presence behind you or a wall behind you or someone walking behind you. Also, Moon Rivas has 2 implants in her feet that allow her to feel the seismic activity of the world. So now she's in Barcelona, but if there's an earthquake in San Francisco, she will feel a vibration in her feet, or if there's an earthquake in China as well. So she's feeling all the seismic activity of the world inside her body. So she has like 2 heartbeats, her own beat and the earth beat. And this makes her feel much more connected to Earth, and it makes her feel Earth in a way that no humans have ever experienced. She now also has a new sense that allows her to feel moonquakes. There's also seismic activity on the moon. So she's also a senstronaut, because whenever the moon vibrates, her body vibrates. So in the 20th century, we saw how humans went to the moon. On the 21st century, we can actually bring the moon in our feet. And this is another form of senstronaut, or exploring space without physically going there. Another project I did that has nothing to do with sense, but it's an ability. I had a tooth missing, so I didn't want to have it replaced with a normal tooth. So we created a tooth in Brazil that when I click, I have emergency light in my mouth. So I can create light in total darkness. This is bioluminescence, something that many animals can create in total darkness. So if you have a tooth missing, you could have it replaced with a tooth with a small light. The problem is that when you eat, the light goes on and off. So we're trying to find a system that won't do that. Also, we created another project with teeth in Brazil. A tooth was installed in my mouth. Another tooth was installed in Moon Riva's mouth. And whenever I click, Moon receives a vibration in her mouth, and whenever she clicks, I receive a vibration in my mouth. We both know the Morse code, so depending on the rhythm, we can actually send words to each other and talk from mouth to mouth. We call this the transcendental communication system, and it allows you to communicate without air conduction, without sight, without hearing. It is a system that would work in space or under the water. It actually works through Bluetooth, so it's a Bluetooth tooth that allows you to communicate from mouth to mouth. Last year, we created the Transspecies Society. Adding senses that are not traditionally human makes you feel transspecies in many cases. I no longer feel 100% human, because the definition of human no longer defines me 100%. So I feel much comfortable defining myself as transspecies. And since we opened the Transspecies Society, we've actually been aware that there's many more people who don't identify as being 100% human, maybe because they've never felt like this, or maybe because they've merged with technology and then don't feel 100% human. So we are creating senses in community. Manuel Munoz is one of the co-founders. He has a sensor that allows him to feel the atmospheric pressure in his ears. And we feel that there's many more people outside that feel that they would like to add new senses and new organs. That's why we're creating these senses in community. Just to end, I think this is the last project I'm working on. It will be implanted in my head this year. It's an organ for the sense of time. We all have a sense of time, but we don't have an organ for the sense of time. So we've created this organ. It's a solar crown. It will be implanted between the skin and the bone. It will give me a point of heat that will slowly go around the head, and it will take 24 hours to do the complete circle. So I will feel the rotation of the Earth in my head, and the aim is to see if this will allow me to feel time through this organ. So automatically I will know what time it is, but the aim is to see if in the future I can actually modify my perception of time. So if I want the situation to last longer, I will make the point of heat go a bit slower, and this should make me feel that time is stretching. So the aim is to take Albert Einstein's theory of time relativity into practice and see whether or not we can actually modify our perception of time if we have an organ for the sense of time. It should be possible, because in the same way that we can create optical illusions because we have an organ for the sense of sight, we should be able to create time illusions if we create an organ for the sense of time. If this is possible, then we could modify our perception of age. If you want to live 200 years, you can either try to make your body live 200 years, or you can change your perception of time, and this would, in the long term, make you feel that you are 200 years old when actually your body is just 80 or 70. So that's my current aim, and I will start this year. So just to end, I think we are in a special moment in history where we are the first generation that can actually decide what senses and organs we want to have as a species. I don't see the creation of new senses and new organs as something unethical. I think it should be seen as ethical, because what is not ethical is what we've been doing for thousands of years. We've been a species that have been changing the planet. We've been designing the planet in order to survive, and this is wrong. We should be changing ourselves in order to survive. If we all had night vision, we wouldn't be using artificial light. So I think the light bulb was not a good invention. We should have invented night vision, because then we wouldn't be changing the natural darkness of the planet when it should be dark. So if we all had night vision, cities would be dark. And I think that in a few centuries, cities will be dark, because we will all have night vision. If we could control our own temperature, we wouldn't be using heaters in the winter. We wouldn't be using air conditionings in the summer. So this would be much better for the planet. So I think that bioethical committees will start seeing it ethical, that the more we design ourselves, the better it will be for the planet, for ourselves as a species, and for other species. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow, okay, if you weren't blown away or inspired by that first session, surely you are now. My goodness, this is the future of the human species. Does anyone have any questions from the audience? We are running a bit behind time, but I feel that was so inspirational that someone may have a question here within the audience. Oh, we have down here at the front row. Can we have a mic here? Oh, there we go.
I've got hundreds of questions, but I'll go with one.
Keep it to it, Ben.
So we have mobile phones in our pockets. They vibrate. We now suffer from things like vibrancy, where we feel that our phone has vibrated, and it hasn't. Surely with all these new sensors, do you get, false readings or, false vibrations of these sensors?
I guess with the mobile phone, it happens when the mobile phone is not there, or when...
Correct. Yeah. Your muscles start to twitch as if
Well, because the organ is always here, so if the organ was removable, it would probably happen. But the organ is always in my body, so I can't really tell if there's any phantom colors that I'm perceiving. But no, I haven't experienced this. I have experienced it with my mobile phone, but I haven't experienced it with my new sense, no.
And how much of the day are you actually switched off?
I don't switch off. There's no switch. So I can switch off the internet connection, but the chip that vibrates depending on the light frequency is never off. So I designed it in a way that it would have no on-off switch, like eyes, hearing, smell. All our senses are always on. We can cover our senses in the same way I can cover my antenna, but it's always on.
Thank you.
Wow. And we had one more question here at the front.
Thank you very much. Gracias. That was awesome. Since you were talking about art, and me being an art student, I wonder how does it feel to look at Kandinsky? Because I know he made a lot of experiments between like music, colors, structures, design, and how does Kandinsky sound for you?
He sounds very chaotic, so I don't know if this was his intention, but his colors are very, there's no, I don't find harmony, but maybe that was his intention. I find harmony in Rothko, for example, which I didn't used to like before because I just saw blocks of gray squares, but since I hear Rothko, it changed completely the way I perceive it. And also Miro, Joan Miro has very pure chords, but I guess that depends on your own musical taste.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Neil. I'm sure Neil will be around. It won't be hard to spot him, so if you have a question for him, thank you very much, sir. Well done. Thank you very much, Neil Harbisson, the first human cyborg.